The pregnancy test trembled in my hand, the two pink lines a stark verdict on a life I wanted more than anything. For almost 2 years, my husband Ryan and I had been trying, and now, at last, we were going to be parents. I clutched the small plastic stick to my chest, hot tears carving paths down my cheeks as I imagined his face when I told him. Maybe this would be the thing that finally bridged the gap that had been slowly widening between us since our wedding day. Maybe a child would make him see me the way he had in the beginning. I slipped the test into my purse, my mind already spinning with a plan to surprise him tonight with the news and his favorite meal, pot roast, slow cooked and falling apart, just the way his mother, Margaret, made it. The irony was not lost on me. I was in a constant, unspoken battle with a woman who had never fully accepted me into their tight-knit world. Ryan had always been a quiet man, even when we were dating. His family was his entire universe, and I often felt like I was just a satellite in a distant orbit, never quite cleared for landing. His mother, Margaret, ruled the family with a velvet glove over an iron fist, her authority enforced through mandatory Sunday dinners and thinly veiled critiques of my cooking. His sisters, Jessica and Ashley, were her loyal lieutenants, always inventing new ways to subtly highlight my status as an outsider. But it was Caleb, Ryan's younger brother, who truly made my skin crawl. At 26, he was still living in his parents' house, bouncing between dead-end jobs and indulging in habits that left his eyes perpetually glazed and his temper on a hair trigger. I always felt his eyes on me during family dinners, his stare holding for a fraction of a second too long whenever Ryan wasn't looking. About 3 months ago, at Margaret's birthday party, Caleb had cornered me in the kitchen. He smelled of stale beer as he leaned against the doorframe, blocking my exit. "Your sister's something else," he'd mumbled, his speech slurred. A real head-turner. Think she'd be interested in settling down? My younger sister, Emma, was only 22, a bright-eyed college grad with ambitions that definitely didn't include a go-nowhere brother-in-law with a knack for trouble. "She's focused on her career right now," I said, trying to sidestep him. His hand shot out and clamped around my wrist. "Come on, Maya, hook a brother up. Family helps family, right?" "I don't think you two are a good match," I said, my voice firm as I wrenched my arm from his grasp. The red mark on my skin faded quickly, but the unease he ignited in me lingered. Caleb's friendly mask dissolved. "You think you're better than us, don't you? With your fancy college degree, acting like you did Ryan a favor by marrying him." "That's not true," I started, but he cut me off. "You'll regret this," he hissed, his voice dropping to a low, menacing whisper. "You'll regret ever looking down on me." I had dismissed it as the bitter rantings of a man drowning in his own failures. Ryan loved me. We were about to start a family. Caleb was just a footnote, a resentful ghost in the house we were building. I was so terribly, devastatingly wrong. The grocery store that afternoon felt like a magical realm, each aisle a path toward our new future. I found myself drifting into the baby section, my fingers tracing the soft cotton of tiny onesies, picturing Ryan's strong, gentle hands holding our child. I bought prenatal vitamins, my first official act of motherhood, and shared a warm smile with the kind-faced cashier who wished me well. The drive home was filled with a quiet, effervescent joy. I rehearsed how I would tell him, finally settling on placing the test next to his dinner plate with a simple note. "Our family is about to get a little bigger." It was perfect, simple and life-changing. But as I turned onto our street, a knot of dread tightened in my gut. There were too many cars lining the curb. Ryan's pickup truck was parked askew in our driveway as if he'd arrived in a frantic hurry. I could see shadows moving inside our living room, the familiar silhouettes of his entire family. My hands trembled as I grabbed the grocery bags, the pregnancy test in my purse suddenly feeling like a piece of incriminating evidence. Maybe it was a surprise party for someone. Maybe Margaret had just decided to host dinner at our place on a whim. Before I could even fish my keys out, the front door swung open. Ryan stood there, his face a mask of cold fury I had never seen before. Over his shoulder, I saw them, Margaret, Jessica, and Ashley, arranged in our living room like a firing squad. And on our sofa, lounging as if he owned the place, was Caleb, a smug, triumphant smirk plastered on his face. "We need to talk," Ryan said, his voice utterly devoid of emotion. I stepped inside, the grocery bag still clutched in my hands, my fingers numb. The air in the room was thick and heavy, crackling with a hostile energy that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. "Sit down," Margaret commanded, her voice as sharp as a shard of glass. I remained standing, the bags a flimsy shield against whatever was coming. What's going on? Ryan held up a sheet of paper. It looked official, covered in medical terminology and stamped with a letterhead. My eyes couldn't focus. I saw scattered phrases: DNA paternity analysis, conclusive match, biological father. "Do you want to explain this?" Ryan's voice was like the crack of a whip. I stared at the paper, my mind refusing to process the words. "I don't understand." "What is that?" "It's a DNA test," Caleb chimed in from the couch, his voice oozing with false sympathy. "Ryan found it in your stuff. Looks like you've been keeping some pretty big secrets." The grocery bag slipped from my grasp, cans of diced tomatoes rolling across the hardwood floor. "That's impossible. I've never taken a DNA test. I don't know what that is." "It says the baby you're carrying is Caleb's," Ashley said, her tone dripping with accusation. "It says you've been sleeping with your own brother-in-law." The room started to spin. "What baby? How could you—" "We found the pregnancy test in your purse," Jessica announced, her voice victorious. "While you were out playing the innocent wife at the grocery store, they had gone through my things. They had stolen my secret, my joy, before I could even share it with my own husband. But worse, so much worse, they had woven a lie so monstrous, so impossible, claiming Caleb was the father of a child I had only just learned about myself. "This is insane," I whispered, my voice barely a breath. "Ryan, you know me. You know I would never—" His face twisted into a snarl of disgust. "I thought I knew you. I was wrong." Before I could say another word, before I could scream or plead or fight back, Ryan's spit hit my cheek. The shock of it, the sheer violation of it, rooted me to the spot. My husband, the man who had vowed to love and protect me, had just spat on me as if I were trash on his shoe. "You're disgusting," he seethed, his voice laced with a venom I never knew he possessed. Before I could even wipe my face, Margaret's hand struck my cheek. The slap echoed in the silent room, followed instantly by Ashley's fingers twisting into my hair, yanking me toward the door. "Everyone should see what kind of trash you really are," Ashley snarled, dragging me out onto the front lawn. I screamed Ryan's name, begging him, pleading with him to just think, to remember the woman he married. But he just stood in the doorway, his face a blank canvas, watching as his sisters paraded my humiliation for the whole neighborhood to see. The lie had already won. It had poisoned every single thing I thought was real. The streetlights were a blurry mess through my tears as I stumbled away from the house that was no longer my home. My cheek burned from Margaret's slap. My scalp ached where Ashley had torn at my hair. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the vast, empty chasm that had opened up in my chest. I heard car doors slam behind me, engines revving as the family retreated, their dark deed done. I didn't look back. I couldn't. My old sedan was parked on the street, a silent, loyal witness to the nightmare. I slid into the driver's seat, my hands shaking so badly I could barely turn the key. Where could I go? My parents were gone, killed in a car crash when I was 19, a tragedy that had initially drawn Ryan to me, his protective nature sparked by my vulnerability. Now, that same protection felt like a sick joke. My Aunt Carol lived in Florida, but she was in her 70s and frail. The stress of her pregnant niece showing up in the middle of the night, disgraced and alone, would be too much for her. I couldn't put that on her. I couldn't bring the shrapnel of my exploded life to the only family I had left. I drove without a destination, past quiet suburban homes glowing with warmth, past families sitting down to dinner, their lives untouched by the kind of poison that had just destroyed mine. Everything I thought I had, everything that had been stolen from me in a single brutal half hour. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Ryan's name flashed on the screen. I ignored it. It buzzed again and again. I finally snatched it and shut it off, the sudden heavy silence in the car feeling even more terrifying than his calls. Zoe. The name surfaced in my mind like a flare in the dark. My college roommate, my chosen sister. She had moved to Seattle a couple of years ago for a job, but we were still as close as ever. If anyone would believe me, if anyone would help without question, it was Zoe. I pulled over at a desolate gas station and used the payphone, a relic from another time that now felt like my only salvation. My fingers fumbled as I punched in her number from memory. Hello? Her voice was groggy with sleep. Zoe, it's me. Maya, I choked out, the words catching in my throat like shards of glass. I'm so sorry to call so late, but Maya. Oh my God, what's wrong? You sound awful. The simple, unadulterated concern in her voice was the key that unlocked the floodgates. I broke down, sobbing into the filthy receiver, gasping out the story in broken pieces. The fake test, Ryan's spit, the humiliation, the pregnancy that was supposed to be a miracle and had become a curse. Get in your car right now, Zoe said, her voice a blend of steel and silk. Drive to Seattle. Don't stop for anything, just drive. I'll have coffee and a clean bed waiting. We will figure this out, together. The 6-hour drive was a hazy blur of headlights and highway signs. I pushed on, fueled by cheap gas station coffee and sheer will, my hand resting on my belly, a silent promise to the tiny, innocent life inside me. With every mile I put between myself and Ryan, it felt like a single stitch was being pulled in a deep wound, painful but necessary. Zoe was waiting at her apartment door in her pajamas, her expression fierce, as if daring the world to try and hurt me again. She took one look at my bruised face and shattered expression and pulled me into a hug that felt like the first safe harbor I'd found in years. You don't have to talk about it tonight, she whispered into my hair, but tomorrow we start planning how we're going to burn them all to the ground. Her spare room became my sanctuary. Zoe worked from home as a freelance designer, which meant she could keep a gentle eye on me. She bought me prenatal vitamins without a word, filled the fridge with ginger ale and saltines for the morning sickness, and never, not for a single second, doubted my story. You could sue them, she said one evening, as we sat on her sofa with a carton of ice cream between us. Expose the fake test. Make them pay. I pressed a hand to my growing stomach, feeling the first faint flutters of life inside. And what if I can't prove it? What if they've already poisoned everyone against me? What if fighting just drags me back into their world? Zoe looked at me, her eyes serious in the soft lamplight. So, what do you want to do? Vanish, I said, the word tasting of freedom, completely. Let them choke on their lie while I go build something real. She nodded slowly. Then that's what we'll do. The reinvention of Maya Evans began the following week. I started applying for remote marketing jobs, and my experience landed me a position with a company that didn't care where I was, as long as I got the work done. Zoe helped me convert her spare room into a small home office, a space that felt both professional and safe. The months slipped by in a quiet, productive rhythm. My belly grew, round and full, my body transforming in ways that both thrilled and terrified me. I went to every doctor's appointment by myself, chose not to find out the baby's gender, and left the father line on all the forms conspicuously blank. This child was going to be mine, and mine alone. The Seattle rain was a steady drum against the hospital window as labor pains took hold of me. Zoe was my rock, holding my hand through every contraction, breathing with me and crying with me when my son, Leo, finally made his dramatic entrance. He was perfect. A full head of dark, unruly hair that was a painful echo of Ryan's, and when he opened his eyes, they were the same deep, soulful brown as his father's. A pang of loss and recognition shot through me. "He looks just like you," Zoe lied, her voice gentle. But we both knew. Every tiny feature, every little expression as he grew, would be a living, breathing reminder of the man who had chosen a lie over his own wife. But he was also mine, utterly and unconditionally mine. The nights were the hardest. Pacing the floor of Zoe's apartment with a crying Leo in my arms, I would sometimes catch myself fantasizing about calling Ryan. I'd imagine telling him about Leo's first gurgling laugh, about the way his tiny hand gripped my finger, about the lullabies that soothed him to sleep. But then the memory would hit me like a physical blow. The spit, the hatred in his eyes, his sisters dragging me into the street, the family that had so easily sacrificed 2 years of love for Caleb's pathetic, convenient lie. I got a new phone number and scrubbed my existence from the internet. Social media accounts vanished. Old email addresses were deleted. Maya Evans, Ryan's wife, was gone. In her place was Maya Collins, single mother, survivor, a woman who had learned that the best revenge is to refuse to be destroyed. Leo and I carved out a quiet existence in Seattle, far from the toxic rot of my past. My absence was my final statement. My silence was my power. They wanted me gone, so I gave them their wish, and in a strange way, that felt like winning. 2 years of carefully constructed peace were blown apart by a phone call on a Tuesday morning. Leo, now a boisterous 2-year-old, was building a wobbly tower of blocks in the living room, making little car noises as he worked. He was becoming his own little person, already showing flashes of his father's stubbornness when it was time for bed. On the other end of the line, Zoe's voice had a sharp edge I hadn't heard since the night I first showed up on her doorstep, broken and lost. "Maya, we have a problem. Someone's been asking about you." My heart hammered against my ribs. In 2 years, not a single ghost from my past had found me. I had been so careful. Who? The word was a harsh crack in the quiet room. Leo looked up, his block tower forgotten, his dark eyes, so much like his father's, wide with a child's intuition. "Ryan." He found Sarah from our old college group, asked her if she'd heard from you, if she knew where you went. Sarah was smart enough to call me first. The room felt like it was tilting. "What did you tell her?" "Nothing, of course." "But Maya..." He sounded wrecked. Sarah said he was crying on the phone. I set down my mug, my hand shaking. I don't care if he was sobbing, he made his choice. But Zoe was quiet for a beat too long. "What else?" I demanded. "What aren't you telling me?" Sarah mentioned something else. "It's Ryan's brother, Caleb. He's in the hospital. Apparently he got pneumonia and it got really bad." The sound of Caleb's name still made my stomach turn, but I felt nothing for his plight. "Good," I said coldly. Maybe karma finally decided to show up. What I didn't know was that in a sterile ICU room hundreds of miles away, Caleb was confessing. The high fever from the infection had broken through the walls of his conscience, and in his delirium, the truth was spilling out like a poison he could no longer contain. Ryan had been at his bedside when it started. "I did it," Caleb had rasped through his oxygen mask, his voice thin and reedy. I made it all up. At first, Ryan thought it was just fever-induced rambling, but Caleb kept repeating it, growing more agitated. The DNA test. It was fake. Maya never did anything. I wanted to hurt her. She wouldn't help me with her sister. I wanted to ruin her. The confession tumbled out in disjointed fragments, a horrifying puzzle snapping into place. Caleb described finding the pregnancy test in my purse, how he'd used a template online to forge the DNA report, how he'd planted it for Ryan to find while I was out buying groceries for the surprise dinner that never happened. In that hospital room, Ryan's world didn't just crack, it imploded. The brother he had defended, the family whose word he had blindly accepted, had systematically destroyed the one good thing in his life. and he had been the weapon. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Ryan reportedly lunged at Caleb right there in the ICU, his hands closing around his brother's throat before security pulled him off. He was banned from the hospital as his family's carefully constructed world fell apart. He stormed into his mother's house, a hurricane of rage and grief, demanding to know if they had known, if they had ever suspected. Margaret's breakdown was apparently spectacular. The matriarch who had orchestrated my public shaming collapsed under the weight of the realization that she had destroyed an innocent woman, her own daughter-in-law. Jessica and Ashley were forced to confront their own roles as judge and jury, their guilt manifesting in panic attacks and frantic attempts to volunteer at women's shelters, as if they could somehow balance the cosmic scales. And then, Ryan's search for me began in earnest. He hired a private investigator who found nothing. I had built my new life on a foundation of anonymity, leaving no digital breadcrumbs, no paper trail. I was a ghost. His desperation led him to Zoe, and Zoe, worn down by my deepening anxiety and believing it was the only way for me to truly move forward, made a choice. She met with the investigator. She had the baby, Zoe told him, her voice heavy. And you should know. The child looks exactly like Ryan, nothing like Caleb at all. That was the thread Ryan needed. He followed it to Seattle, to Zoe's apartment building, and to the end of my 2 years of peace. The knock came on a Thursday evening, just as Leo and I were finishing up in the small herb garden on Zoe's balcony. It wasn't the quick tap of a neighbor or the hurried knock of a delivery person. This was slow, deliberate, and heavy with intention. My blood turned to ice. "Door, Mama," Leo said, looking up at me with his bright, innocent face. I knew. Before I even looked through the peephole, I knew who was on the other side. My body remembered his presence the way a trauma survivor remembers a trigger, instantly and completely. My hand trembled as I walked to the door, Leo trailing behind me. Through the distorted fisheye lens, I saw him. Ryan. He looked like he had aged a decade. His face was gaunt, his eyes shadowed with a guilt so profound it seemed to have carved lines into his skin. I slid the chain lock into place and opened the door just a few inches. "Maya," he breathed, my name a broken prayer on his lips. Behind me, Leo had gone quiet, sensing the tension. He peeked around my leg, his curious brown eyes landing on the stranger in the hallway. Ryan's gaze dropped to him, and I watched his face crumble. The recognition was instantaneous and absolute. Leo's dark, curly hair, the stubborn set of his jaw. It was like looking at a miniature version of the man I once loved. "Is that?" Ryan's voice cracked, the unfinished question hanging between us. I didn't say a word. I just stepped back and slowly, deliberately, closed the door, the soft click of the lock echoing in the sudden silence. I could see his shadow under the door. I could hear his ragged breathing. He stood there for what felt like an eternity, a silent statue of regret, while I gave Leo his bath and read him a bedtime story. He only left when the hallway lights dimmed for the night. He came back the next evening, and the next. On the fourth day, a letter appeared under the door, my name in his familiar, neat script. I threw it out, unopened. More letters followed, gifts for a child he didn't know, flowers that I let wilt. I donated the toys and threw the rest in the dumpster. Then came the apologies, his voice muffled through the wood. "Maya, please. I know you can hear me. Just let me explain." Leo started asking, why sad man talk to door, Mama? I told him the man was lost, that he had the wrong apartment. But he knew. The breaking point arrived on a Tuesday. I was working late, and Zoe was out of town. I had just put Leo to bed when I heard a sound in the hall. It wasn't a knock, it was a sob. Ryan was sitting on the floor, his back pressed against my door, crying. Not quiet, controlled tears, but the raw, ugly, soul-shattering sobs of a man who had lost everything. I believed them. He choked out, his voice broken. God, Maya, I believed them because it was easier. It was easier than standing up to my family. It was easier than choosing you. I felt myself slide down my side of the door until I was sitting on the floor too, separated from him by 3 inches of wood and a universe of pain. I threw it all away because I was a coward, he continued. I see your face every night. I see the look in your eyes when I spat on you. The betrayal. And I know I did that. I destroyed you. He struggled to catch his breath. That little boy. He's mine, isn't he? He has my eyes. He's my son. And I'll never know him because I chose a lie. When I finally spoke, my voice was as cold and steady as a frozen river. You're right. You will never know him because the woman who loved you died that night. And Leo isn't some prize you get to claim now that you're sorry. The silence that followed was absolute. I heard him get to his feet, heard the soft sound of his hand resting on the door one last time. I know, he whispered. I know I don't deserve it, but I never stopped loving you, not for a second, and I'll regret not fighting for you for the rest of my life. His footsteps faded away, but I knew this wasn't the end. The door between us was no longer just a piece of wood. It was a boundary. It was my sanctuary, and I had no intention of ever opening it. I was prepared for Ryan's persistence, but not for the delegation that appeared 3 weeks later. Through the peephole, I saw them. Margaret clutching a thick envelope, Jessica, her hands twisting a rosary, and Ashley holding a professionally wrapped gift. Maya, please, Margaret's voice, thin and aged, drifted through the door. We just want to talk. We need to make this right. Leo was napping, and I was grateful. I walked away from the door and let them stand there in the silent hallway, let them feel the crushing weight of a closed door, of being shut out and dismissed. An hour later, they left their peace offerings and retreated. When Zoe got home, she found me staring at the pile of unopened letters and boxes. They came here, was all I said. What should I do with this? She asked, gesturing to their attempts at reconciliation. Send it back, I said, but first give them a message from me. Zoe pulled out her phone. Tell them, you shamed me in public. You will heal in silence. The message didn't stop them. Margaret's letters started arriving daily, full of justifications and a desperate need to know about her grandchild. Jessica began appearing at the periphery of my life, at the grocery store, the park, a guilty ghost I refused to acknowledge. And Ashley wrote a long, self-serving apology on social media that went viral, turning her guilt into a public performance of activism. Amid this circus of atonement, I met with a lawyer. My Aunt Carol, fierce and protective despite her age, had found her for me. No father on the birth certificate means he has no legal rights, the lawyer confirmed. As far as the law is concerned, Leo has one parent. We built a legal firewall, a fortress of documentation to protect my son from the family that had discarded him before he was even born. There was only one person left I needed to address directly. I wrote a single letter to Caleb, the architect of my destruction, one sentence on a blank piece of paper. You tried to erase a woman, but you created a mother. His life is the one thing you can never touch. Ryan's desperation eventually led me to agree to a single meeting, a decision made more for Zoe's sanity than my own. We met at a bright, noisy family restaurant. I brought Leo. I wanted him to see, really see, the son he had so easily rejected. Ryan was already there. As we approached, I saw the exact moment he looked at Leo, and the recognition hit him like a physical blow. Leo, now a confident chatterbox, was an undeniable echo of his father. "Hi," Leo said cheerfully to the sad-faced stranger, climbing into the booster seat. Ryan just stared at our son, his face a canvas of awe and devastation. "I don't deserve him, do I?" he whispered across the table, his voice barely audible over the clatter of the restaurant. I didn't answer. Some truths are so absolute they don't need to be spoken aloud. That one meeting set the precedent for everything that followed. I laid down the law. Ryan could see Leo once a year on his birthday for 2 hours, supervised by Zoe. No family, no overnights, no exceptions. He became Mr. Ryan, the nice man who brought incredible presents and always looked like he was about to cry. Leo, with the simple acceptance of a child, never questioned it. This was his normal. Ryan's family, I heard, had changed. Margaret now poured her guilt into volunteering at a shelter for falsely accused women. Jessica became a journalist, writing about the very kind of familial injustice she had perpetrated. And Ashley, the sister who had dragged me by my hair, now dedicated her life to working with special needs children, protecting the vulnerable. I didn't forgive them, but I saw the strange, distorted justice in it. My destruction had, in a way, created 3 advocates who might save other women from the same fate. And from the ashes of my old life, Zoe and I built something new. We started a support group for women like me, women who had been publicly shamed and falsely accused. We called ourselves the Silent Strength. Our motto was simple: we don't scream, we don't fight, we walk away and rebuild louder than we were broken. We taught each other how to build legal firewalls, secure our finances, and, most importantly, we believed each other without question. Caleb, I heard, was living a solitary life in another state, a ghost haunted by the life he had destroyed. His punishment was the empty echo of his own choices. Sometimes, late at night, I think about what revenge really is. I used to think it was about fighting back, about screaming your truth until you were heard. But I was wrong. My silence had been my weapon. My absence had been their consequence. They were left to live with their guilt, while I was left to live with my son, my peace, and the unshakable truth that I had survived. Real revenge, I learned, isn't about what you do to the people who hurt you. It's about what you refuse to let them take from you ever again. The end of the story.